"Sir, those look like something from a costume shop. You can't seriously expect a discount for fake medals, can you?" The young store clerk at Fresh Market sneered, peering skeptically at the small ribbon bar pinned inside retired Master Sergeant Bill Thompson's worn denim jacket. At 73, Bill's weathered hand tightened on his walking stick as a familiar heaviness settled in his chest. "They're not fake, son. They represent a lifetime of service," Bill replied quietly, his voice carrying the measured tone of a man who'd learned when to fight and when to walk away. The clerk, his name tag read Tyler, just smirked with the arrogance only youth could muster. "Right. Full price then, old man." Bill had come to Fresh Market, an upscale grocery chain in downtown Denver, because of their advertised Hometown Heroes discount, 15% off for veterans, seniors, and first responders during their anniversary week. All he wanted was a decent cup of coffee and maybe a fresh blueberry muffin, a small treat on his fixed income. But now, standing at the gleaming checkout counter with other customers watching, Bill felt something he hadn't experienced in years: public humiliation over his honor. The Purple Heart, the Silver Star, the Combat Infantryman Badge, all earned in the jungles of Vietnam and later in classified operations that would never make history books, dismissed as party store trinkets. What Tyler didn't know was that Bill carried more than just medals. He carried phone numbers. And one of those numbers belonged to someone who took insults to his old sergeant very, very personally. Master Sergeant Bill Thompson had served 32 years in the U.S. Army Special Forces. At 73, he lived simply in a one-bedroom apartment near the VA hospital, his days filled with long walks, volunteering at the local Boys and Girls Club, and trying to pass on some wisdom to kids who reminded him of soldiers he'd once trained. His service medals weren't for show. They were tucked discreetly inside his jacket, a private reminder of brothers lost and missions completed. The small ribbon bar told a story: Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Iraq. Places where young Americans had bled for freedoms that people like Tyler took for granted. Bill rarely spoke about his past. The classified missions, the men he'd trained, the impossible situations where failure meant death, all of it lived in the quiet corners of his memory. But he'd made lifelong bonds with soldiers who'd gone on to bigger things. Much bigger things. Tyler, barely 19, and working at Fresh Market while figuring out his life, saw only an old man with a cane trying to scam a discount. He'd bragged to coworkers about shutting down these fake veterans who came in with costume jewelry, expecting handouts. What Tyler couldn't see was the dangerous calm settling over Bill's features, the same expression that had preceded some very decisive actions in very dangerous places. Bill slowly pulled out his basic flip phone. "I'll just take a bottle of water instead," he said quietly. Tyler rang up the Dasani for $2.75, taking Bill's money with theatrical flourish. But Bill wasn't walking away. He was making a call. The number he dialed hadn't been used in 3 years. It belonged to a man who'd once been a green lieutenant under Bill's command in places that didn't officially exist. That lieutenant was now Admiral Samuel Sam Mitchell, commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Group. A SEAL. Bill moved to a small seating area near Fresh Market's entrance, ostensibly to drink his overpriced water. His fingers moved across the worn keypad of his flip phone to a contact simply labeled SM. A direct line he'd been told to use: "If you ever need anything, Sergeant Major." Anything. The phone connected on the second ring. "Mitchell." "Sam, it's Bill. Bill Thompson." A pause. Then the voice warmed considerably while retaining its edge of command. "Sergeant Major. Hell, it's been too long. Everything all right? You sound different." Bill quickly, emotionlessly recounted the incident. The advertised discount. Tyler's blatant mockery. The accusation of fake medals. The public humiliation. Fresh Market on 16th and Broadway, downtown Denver, Bill finished. "Just thought you should know how some places are treating veterans these days." "Location confirmed, Sergeant Major," Admiral Mitchell replied, his voice now like winter steel. "Don't leave the premises. I'm currently 3 blocks away heading to a meeting with the mayor about the new Navy recruiting station. My route just got adjusted." The line went quiet except for muffled voices, Mitchell giving rapid orders to his security detail. "Bill, you just sit tight. This requires immediate personal attention." The line went dead. Bill took a slow sip of his water, a grim satisfaction settling in his gut. He knew Sam Mitchell. When Mitchell decided on immediate personal attention, things happened fast and with undeniable impact. What happened next would make Fresh Market's anniversary week unforgettable. Less than 8 minutes later, the peaceful atmosphere of Fresh Market shattered like glass. The automatic front doors, which had been cheerfully swooshing open for customers, suddenly hissed shut with a definitive thud. Then, with a distinct mechanical click, they locked. Simultaneously, sharp-eyed staff noticed the rear emergency exits were now blocked by 2 large men in dark suits who seemed to have materialized from nowhere. Shoppers looked around in confusion. Power outage? Security drill? Some kind of corporate inspection? Tyler was still at his register, having just finished telling another cashier about the pathetic old faker with the costume medals, when the front doors were manually forced open just wide enough for one man to enter. He was tall, powerfully built, wearing civilian clothes that somehow couldn't conceal the coiled energy and absolute authority he projected. His eyes, the color of a storm-tossed ocean, swept the store with unnerving intensity before locking onto Bill, still seated near the entrance. Admiral Samuel Mitchell ignored the confused stares, striding directly to his former sergeant major. "Bill," Mitchell said, his voice low but carrying easily as he clasped Bill's shoulder. "Good to see you, Sergeant Major. Sorry about the delay, had to secure the perimeter." He then turned his attention to Tyler, who was staring slack-jawed, suddenly aware that something very serious was happening. "You," Mitchell said, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level, pointing a steel finger at Tyler. "The one who thinks service medals are party favors. Step away from that register. Now." The store manager, a flustered woman named Mrs. Henderson, finally rushed forward. "Excuse me, sir. Who are you? What's going on? Why are my doors locked?" Mitchell's gaze never left Tyler, but his voice addressed her with military precision. "Ma'am, I am Admiral Samuel Mitchell, United States Navy. What's happening is that your employee has gravely insulted a highly decorated combat veteran, a man to whom this nation owes an unpayable debt." His voice carried through the now silent store. "This establishment is under temporary operational review." Mrs. Henderson looked like she might faint. "Admiral? Special Forces?" But Tyler said he was just. "Tyler," Admiral Mitchell cut her off, his laser gaze fixed on the now trembling clerk, "is about to receive a practical education in military honors and the cost of disrespect." Mitchell gestured, and one of his men handed him the store's PA microphone. His voice boomed through Fresh Market, clear and commanding. "Attention shoppers and staff. This is Admiral Mitchell, United States Navy. Due to a serious incident of disrespect shown to a decorated military veteran, this store is temporarily ceasing operations." Stunned silence filled the aisles. The employee in question, Tyler, publicly mocked this veteran's service medals, calling them fake costume jewelry. "Let me educate everyone present about those fake medals." Mitchell's voice grew harder. "They include the Silver Star for gallantry in action, multiple Bronze Stars for valor in combat, and the Purple Heart for wounds received defending the freedoms you all enjoy." He looked directly at Tyler, whose face had gone white. "These aren't trinkets, son. They're forged in blood, sacrifice, and courage you can't begin to comprehend. They represent a commitment to something greater than yourself, a concept you clearly don't understand." The store was dead quiet except for Tyler's rapid breathing. Mitchell continued, "Mrs. Henderson, you will place Tyler on immediate unpaid leave pending termination. You will issue a public apology to Master Sergeant Thompson and all veterans. You will implement mandatory training for your entire staff on proper respect for military service members." His voice dropped ominously. "And you will make a substantial donation to the Special Forces Foundation in Sergeant Thompson's name. The amount will be discussed privately." He clicked off the microphone. The only sound was Tyler's quiet whimpering. But Admiral Mitchell wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Admiral Mitchell turned back to Bill, his expression softening with genuine warmth. "Sergeant Major, some of my team are outside. They're going to escort you wherever you need to go today." He gestured toward the doors where 2 more men in suits had appeared, men who looked like they could dismantle the entire store with their bare hands if requested. They're also going to ensure you get that coffee and anything else you want from this store. On the house. For life. Mitchell looked pointedly at Mrs. Henderson. Understood. The manager nodded frantically. But Mitchell had one more surprise. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small presentation box. Bill, I've been carrying something that belongs to you. Inside was a Distinguished Service Cross, one of the Army's highest decorations. This finally came through channels for that operation in '89, the one that never happened, in the place we were never at. Mitchell's voice grew quiet with respect. It's been classified for 34 years. As of yesterday, it's not. Bill stared at the medal, his weathered hands trembling slightly. He remembered that mission. He remembered the men who didn't come home. There are some honors, Mitchell said loudly enough for everyone to hear, that take decades to acknowledge. This man served in places you'll never read about, fighting battles you'll never know happened, so you could sleep safely in your beds. He personally unlocked the front doors, not for the public, but for Bill and his new escort of formidable-looking men who clearly took their protective duties very seriously. As they prepared to leave, Mitchell had one final word for Tyler, who was slumped against the counter in shock. Son, you just learned something they don't teach in school. Respect isn't given, it's earned. And some people have earned more than you'll ever understand. The aftermath was swift and complete. Tyler was terminated within the hour. Fresh Market issued a public apology that ran in the Denver Post and across their social media platforms. They donated $50,000 to the Special Forces Foundation and implemented a comprehensive training program overseen by consultants from Admiral Mitchell's office. The Hometown Heroes discount became permanent, with crystal-clear guidelines and zero tolerance for disrespect toward qualified service members. Bill Thompson found himself, much to his quiet surprise, something of a local legend. The story of the Navy SEAL admiral who locked down an upscale grocery store to defend his old sergeant major became the kind of tale that reminded people some bonds are unbreakable and some lines shouldn't be crossed. Bill didn't seek the attention, but he did accept the lifetime supply of free coffee from a now extraordinarily respectful Fresh Market staff. Admiral Mitchell checked in regularly, ensuring his old sergeant major had access to any support he needed. The incident wasn't just about a rude clerk or a denied discount. It was about dignity, the visible and invisible wounds carried by those who serve, and ensuring that the symbols of that service are treated with the reverence they deserve. It was also a stark demonstration that when one of their own is disrespected, the Brotherhood, whether Army Special Forces or Navy SEAL, will respond. Sometimes with the quiet, overwhelming force of locked doors and undeniable truth. Because some medals aren't just metal and ribbon. They're a nation's promise kept in blood and sacrifice. And that promise must always be honored. Subscribe to Everyday Hero Files if you believe our heroes' sacrifices should never be questioned, and that disrespect will always meet its match.